There we go. Everything seems to be up and running today. That is good, as it should be. So far, no glitches, no maintenance issues. But there's still time. There's still time for that. Don't worry. There will be problems. There will be issues during the streams. Hopefully not. Let's see. Okay. Since it's recording and the stream has begun, let me talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. First of all, everything we're going to do today is not scripted. It's not heavily planned out, besides the few key points that include what we are going to be working with, such as creating a REST API, and that we want to work with some sort of database, and that we want to add some sort of user authentication at some point. And that will probably come in a different stream. Probably not today, because that's going to take a little while to get there. Because I'm going to do a lot of talking, I'm going to elaborate what I'm doing, I'm going to do my best to pretty much say out aloud what I'm thinking and what my thought process is while I'm working on this. So what we are going to do, since not everyone has necessarily IntelliJ Ultimate, or well, yeah, since not necessarily everyone has that, they may have a community edition, then they wouldn't have a Spring initializer inbuilt in the integrated development environment. Therefore, I will be using the web installer for both the Spring as well as JHipster when we get that far, because we're going to be using this as a great example. JHipster has gotten a lot of minds working on this great project, which is pretty much just a click and install setting of microservices. And I love that, but they're very heavy, is what I feel. And that's not really what I want to create. I want to create an initial boilerplate for my future APIs, and we are going to be setting up one, perhaps two entities, keep it simple, and make sure we have everything in place. That includes logging, that includes authentication, includes multiple profiles. So if you're running on a dev environment, then you have a dev profile. If you're running on a stage environment, then you have a stage profile, and so on. What else? I probably wrote something down, didn't I? I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's not that complicated. The most complicated setup we're going to do is probably going to be messing around a little bit with logback, which is setting up the logging, as well as the Spring aspects, which allows us to annotate certain things. But we don't need to annotate much at all, because in JHipster have already solved that problem with logging APIs and logging REST or other database repository calls, because all of that's something that will it's important to get out. It's important to log it and make sure we can keep track of what's going on in the back end. That reminds me, setup logging. That's probably something we should do. And in case you wonder what all of this is just I'm working on a game, by the way. So the backstory of this is I'm working on a game, a multiplayer game, and this needs a backend API to access database, to do possible calculation or something. Who knows what we are going to do later. But initially it's just going to be a simple API. Very simple REST API. Now you could use Spring REST, which is a dependency. I'm not going to do that because I don't want all those features. I just wanted to keep it simple, and frankly, yeah, keep it simple. I want control of what I'm doing. Let's see. Let's start by creating a project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start Spring.io. That's where I create most of my projects if I didn't have Ultimate Edition of IntelliJ. Now my group is just going to be my domain, which is just com Ivan Scotty, ivanscotty.com backwards. Figure out. We're going to choose Java. We're going to choose the default Spring Boot version. And the artifact is going to be the app name, I guess. Now since this is more of a template, what should I name this? Spring API, why not? This is the Spring API project. Perhaps API template. Yeah, why not? API template. That will help us recognize when talking about Spring components and not, because if I were to name the artifact Spring something, it may be a bit confusing when I keep talking about it. So API template is more separate out of Spring. Now the name can be more, beautiful. So API template. Description, yeah, template project. Package name? No, I don't like that. In fact, I think package name, if I recall correctly, you cannot have hyphens in the package name, but you can have them in the artifact name. So I'm gonna keep it like so. We're gonna keep the default jar. We're gonna use Java 11, so make sure to have that. Java 8 still works. Nothing wrong with that. But why not stick with what's most people are starting to use? Not have used in the past. So dependencies. What dependency are we going to be using today? Well, let me talk about the first third-party dependency we're going to be using. And that is Project Lombok. This is a neat little package, at least for us that uses Java still, that allows us to annotate certain classes to generate boilerplate functionalities such as getters, setters, toString, equals, and hash. Yeah, a lot of things, and as well as create constructors, empty constructors, required argument constructors, which means when you have variables that have private, final, and no value set to the variable, that means that has to be set in a constructor somewhere. Otherwise, you're gonna get an error. The IDE is gonna tell you that it's bad. Don't do that. So we're gonna be using this, and that means if you're using IntelliJ, if you're using Eclipse or any other IDE, you have to make sure you download the project's plugin. For example, in IntelliJ IDE, if you were to open a new project and go to plugins and marketplace, you can find Lombok plugin. And make sure to install the one with 12 million downloads, because then you're sure, you know, it's correct and not wrong. Let's see, where did I put the... So that is that. What else do we want? Let me make sure to add it first though, so we don't forget. We need to add the Spring Web dependency. That's essential. Now, I'm not going to be adding any, you know, user interface, so we don't need any time leaf, we don't need anything else, just a web. Keep it simple. What else? Well, there are certain dev tools and configurations you may want to add, which is, well, also dev tools. And this configuration process allows us to what can I say, process configuration, so your IDE understands that this is part of the project and can give you some helpful tips and whatnot. What else? The dev tools, and what else do we need to add? We need to add Spring Data GPA. It's nice. Is that the same one? Yeah, that's the same one. Now we don't need to work with this because we're not going to create our own queries. We're going to simply use GPA. That's fine. No problem. So what database are we going to be using? Well, I'm asking a rhetorical question. We're going to be using H2. And the reason we're going to use H2 is because it's very easy to work with, it's a perfect prototype tool, and it's not bad at all. I mean, you can use it for production if you really want to. It's not often used for that, but there's nothing wrong in doing so, especially in independent projects. So unless I have a reason not to use it, for whatever that may be, I'm usually using it. Other databases worth mentioning is Postgres. That's something, Postgres, sorry. I butchered the pronunciation there, I think. But Postgres, for example, now that's a database I would easily set up in DigitalOcean, for example. And we may do that at some point, just as part of learning. I like to experiment, try new things, you know, or redo things and write it down so I can redo it later and forget about it. And remember it when I read it. Which is some of the reason why I keep writing guides and whatnot on my website. For example, the one I've been using most recently is, which one is it? This one. How set up secure blog with Ghost and DigitalOcean. This gives all the steps you need to set up your certificates, so you get an HTTPS, big S. That's important now, because now Google's gonna block your site or tell your potential visitor that this is a dangerous site. Keep away. And that's, I mean, it's pretty easy to do. And I keep going back to these tutorials I might make myself, because frankly, no developer in their right mind would remember everything they do and how they do it. They would usually go back to where they would usually know where to find information about it, rather. They would usually have their own project they can look at. If they need to set up some boilerplates, perhaps they have some utility scripts for, let's say, you know, JSON parsing or whatever. They may have some utility class they themselves created, so they can just easily find it instead of trying to think redo it, remake the wheel over and over and over again. Now you're gonna be great at it, of course, if you keep doing that. But that's not a very efficient way of working, even though it's a fun way of working. So back to Spring Initializer. What else do we need? We have Lombok, we have Spring Web, we have Spring Configuration Processor, we have the DevTools, we have the GPA, we have the database. Am I forgetting something? I honestly don't know, because this is improvised. I'm not planning this ahead. We may get back to OAuth 2. We have to research Keycloak a little bit. Now, as part of a developer's process is that you have to keep learning new things. You have to keep learning new things. And if you stop learning, you're going to be stuck. You're not going to move anywhere, And you're going to get bored with your job. So I have not learned Keycloak yet, but we will be doing that next time. Let's see. We don't seem to need anything else. I'm just looking through this. Oh boy. Postgres. We don't need any NoSQL. We don't need any messaging. Yes, that reminds me. We will need verification, or rather validation, not verification yet. And validation allows us to use useful annotations on the DTOs, the data transference objects we're going to be sending and receiving via the API. So that can be, for example, if I were to do a post call with Postman, for example, just to make it the dev related, your JSON format will be the DTO. It will be the template we expect to be sending and receiving from one service to another, or one user to a service, or out of the application and into the application. So DTO, data transference object, or possibly data transfer object. I never remember these acronyms perfectly, but you have an idea what it is. What else? Let's go all the way down and go upwards. Cloud Bus, we don't need to work with cloud. I don't see anything. We may want to add actuator. That may be of relevance. That may be useful to us. I don't know if I will though. I mean, for my own projects, usually don't need that, but you know what? Let's add actuator. Why not? Supports building or custom endpoints that let you monitor and manage your application, such as application health, metrics, and session, etc. And I think the health could be useful. I wonder if I can make Jenkins be aware of that and then just do something about it if it were to go down, maybe? We're not gonna add it now. Maybe later. Okay, let's generate our project. We'll get a zip file. Let's find a place to put it. I'm gonna put it in documents. We're gonna create a new folder called dev development. In here, let's put it in. Right click, and if you don't have 7-zip, get it right away. It's free. It's the best tool for unzipping, zipping, and zapping, and whatever. Extract files to API template. Now that's fine. That looks good. Let me delete the zip file. We don't need that anymore. So now we have our project ready built. We will also going to add the project to a Git repository, and this repository is going to be public because this is going to be a template I'm going to be reusing probably during various projects in the future as well as now. Let's see. Now where should we put this? Let's go to the Java. I think would be a good place. My Java project. I see. A long time ago, I worked on a year ago, I worked on a template, but that didn't go anywhere. So let's forget about that. Don't look at that. This is the API template. Yes. Spring Boot API template for amazing developers. It's gonna be public. We are going to add a license, but not now. License is going to be, was it MIT? I think MIT. Yeah, MIT. Let's create it. And if you don't have Git installed, make sure you do. I assume most of you that are interested in Spring Boot would have Git installed. That may not be the case, but I'm just mentioning install Git. And set up your environment so you can access it via the PowerShell window. Now this thing is nice now. Windows have really improved their PowerShell. Before you couldn't even use, well, SSH, but now you can. Built in. I don't have to install it. I don't have to install putty, which is a Windows tool for, connecting into your other computers or whatever, or servers or whatever. Probably more than that, but that's just what I've been using it for anyway. Let's see. What are we going to do? Well, I guess we could, you know, navigate to our project first, so we can initiate this. So I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna cd into it. And here we can see our project file, so let's make sure to initiate it by using git init. And then, we can just follow the steps here. Now, I'm not gonna add the readme, I'm gonna add everything. But we are going to add the readme. Why not? Let's add the readme here while we are at it. New text document. This is going to be readme.md, which is a markdown language. And what we're going to add is just, well, I'm just going to add the name of the project, which is just the API template. And then we want to add the license to the project. And the license is just going to be MIT. And how do you do that? How do you add the license? MIT license template. Let's see if we can find something. GitHub, interesting. Yeah, but that's not the one. We want to go to opensource.org. License is MIT. That's what we really want. I'm curious what they have here. Well, I guess that's the template then. But just in case, let's go here. Here it is. Copy year, corporate holder. Copy this. MIT. What year is it? It's 2021. Hello, Gulpy. Welcome. And my name, what's my name? Today it's, you know, Ivan Skoldia. Same as yesterday, strangely enough. Saving that. And that's pretty much enough, that's it. That's enough to tell the GitHub that this is an MIT project, it's gonna recognize that. It's enough to tell users that are browsing through GitHub and finding my project that they can use it. You know, do whatever they want. Save. Thank you for following. Or subscribing. What is it? I don't know. It's a follow. Yay! Thank you. I should probably add separate sounds, because if people are on YouTube right now, watching on YouTube, you know who you are. If you're on YouTube and subscribing, I'm gonna hear the same volume. It's gonna be, oh my god, I'm gonna freak out. What is it? Let's see. Git status. Here you can see all the files we haven't committed yet. And we do have a default git ignore, which is very nice. Thank you, Spring Initializer, for that. Git add dot. That means just git add everything in the folder we're in. That's what it means. Oh, a lot of warnings. But ignore that. We don't need. Warnings are to be ignored. That's why they're warnings, they're not errors. Well, my PowerShell is acting a little strange right now, but that's fine. Having done that, let's go back to our GitHub project. Let's see. So we have added everything. We added everything, not just the readme. And we also want to commit. So git commit. And our message, this is usually, you know, first commit. But we're not gonna be usual. We're gonna be Spring Initializer setup with MIT readme, of course. And then, optionally, you can change the branch name. I don't care about that, so we're gonna skip that and change to git remote add origin. And the origin is gonna be this generated URL. Right click. And the strange thing about PowerShell, and it's a little bit different than Notepad and opening other tools, text tools, is if you copy something, all you have to do is select where you want it to go, left click, and then right click. It just goes there. It just knows somehow, I don't know. Having done that, now our Git knows where our remote is, and now we want to make sure to push our... what does the U stand for again? I don't remember, but that's not the important part. The important part is we're pushing now master to origin, so it's in the reverse order. There we go. It has been done. So if you now go here and refresh pressing F5, what's gonna happen? It's gonna be there. Who would have guessed? What else? We now have our initial project, but we don't want to start working on that. We want to create a branch, you know? Let's call it a development branch. So we have a Git, and we have a checkout, and then we have a B. New branch, I guess. We're gonna call this development. Or maybe just dev. Or development. I don't know. I cannot change my mind. You know what? Let's go with dev. Yeah, the dev branch. The dev branch is fine, right? Yeah, it's fine. It has been done. We have been changed to the new branch. But keep in mind, this branch does not exist yet. It's not here. Because we haven't told it about this. How do we do that? I don't remember, to be honest. So let's try it. Let's try pushing. What happens? Well, that didn't work. But now it told us something that we could possibly do. And that's to set the upstream origin dev. Let's try. What will happen? Aha! Set upstream. That's what U is. Origin dev. Is this gonna work? I don't know. And that's the part of being a developer. You don't know 90% of what you're doing. You kind of just you have an inkling, a little feeling, a little tingling sensation that tells you that this seems to be the right thing. Let's see. If I refresh this page, are we gonna find a new branch? Excellent, excellent. So now we can focus on this branch. So usually, when you're working in a project with a team, with more people. I assume they're people. They can be dogs. I mean, if you have a very friendly work environment, you know. But one way or another, you'd probably add another branch. You would create another branch for your task or your epic, if we may. So, what branch should we create from this? Or rather, not branch. What task are we gonna do today? Well, we're gonna set it up. We're gonna set up the initial data. We're gonna set up, that means config, logging, everything that doesn't have anything directly to do with the project you are going to be developing. It's just the boilerplate stuff. So in a way, this is just a boilerplate project we're setting up, which is the entire premise of this project. So because of that, I'm not gonna do any branches. It's the same process if you keep creating branches. So if you're on the dev branch and you create another branch from the dev branch, you're branching out, and usually you would create a branch with, for example, usually maybe a number. So if you're using Jira, you would have a Jira task number, and that can be 42. And then you have maybe a little description of what you're doing, setting up boilerplate or something like that, or maybe just a number. I mean, who knows? It could also be the project name. That's also a very common thing to do. Yes, we're using Java. We're not using Kotlin. We're not using, what was the third option? Groovy? There was a third option, but that doesn't matter. We're gonna be using Java today. We will probably be playing around with Kotlin in the future someday. And in case you haven't gotten the impression yet, on the streams, on YouTube, we are doing pretty much a lot of things. The main focus of the streams is game development. That's the main, the new game project. The game project is still put out. It's not a new game project, but that's what I'm doing most of. But around it, I do little things that may help us in the end, and sometimes little to-dos that I, put aside for a bit too long. That can be making smaller apps. I wanted to make a time tracking application, but what has stopped me a lot of the times is because I'm still not very, very familiar with front-end development. That being said, we are working on a website, so in the next couple of streams we may work on that and finish that. It's 90% done. It's almost done. So why not get that done, push it out, and see if we can do something else. Okay, enough rambling. Let's see. So we have created our Spring app via the Spring initializer. So we need to set up log. Now this is not any particular order, but we're gonna jump right up, left, up and down. And we have created the repo now. Let's see. I guess we can open our application now. I think we're ready for that. Are we ready for that? I think we're ready for that. But yeah, you can find more info about the game project I'm working on in my previous streams. I don't know how long Twitch holds the streams. If you go on YouTube, you can find a live streams playlist. I try to put all my live streams there. Some organized in different separate playlists. Most of them, well, all of them are in a single live stream playlist as well. Let's see. Let me open up our project. Let's open IntelliJ. Open. Hopefully that should work. Documents, development. Let me refresh. Where did I put it? Was not here? I could have sworn I put it there. Am I not? Oh, you sneaky, sneaky. I see what you have done, Windows. You're trying to make me use OneDrive. That's not good. Let's cut that out. I don't want it on OneDrive. Yeah, why is OneDrive is default now, apparently. Let's cut it out. Let's go to the real documents folder. Users, even documents. There it is. I don't know what this is. Let's delete that. Let's see. For affiliates and partners, there's different times for storing VODs. Yeah, I heard that. I don't know if I'm going to be partnering with Twitch ever, because that's going to restrict my YouTube a bit. Because I like to... To me, it's not important to monetize on Twitch or YouTube. My importance is to, you know, get out there, to let people know I'm doing amazing things. You're going to learn amazing stuff. You're going to try and succeed with me while doing projects and learning and you know, just chilling, relaxing. Let's see. Let's find a project. Documents. There it is. Development. API template. And it recognizes it's a Maven project. So let's just open the folder is fine. The folder is fine. It's taking a little time to work. When you see this in the bottom, it means it's, you know, it's doing stuff, updating indexes and whatnot. And the time may vary depending on how new your computer is. I think it seems done. Yeah, it looks done, doesn't it? Excellent. So as I mentioned before, Lombok, don't forget, go to settings, find the plugins, marketplace, search for Lombok, and make sure to install it. Let me just browse quickly to all my plugins in case there's something I forgot to mention and you have problems. There are a lot of plugins. Let me go a little faster. Surely 30 FPS can capture this. There we go. Okay. Let's see what we have. What do we have? We have a lot of things. A few empty folders. We have application... Yeah. Properties. No one likes properties. You know what we like? We like YAML. That's what we like. We don't like properties. Yeah. What else? We also don't like the name of this this class. Now this is the main class, the class that starts the entire process of everything. Hello FG Walid, welcome. So let's change the name of this class to something nicer, something more friendly, something that tells me, the developer, immediately what this is. Like right away, no doubt. Well, there are two options. One, if you want to be nice about it, is, you know, naming it a main. That's a very explicit class name for what this is. This is the main. Another way to do this is naming this an application, because this is the application itself. This is where it all begins. I lean more towards application. But if you're working with new developers, if you're working with other people, they may benefit from main if they are already used to this horrible class name. So let's refactor that. Speaking of which, you can right click and refactor as well. Let me undo. Yes, undo, please. How did I... Yeah. What I did, I pressed left shift and F6 to get the rename window up. And sometimes I do shortcuts, and if I don't talk about them, please catch me on that, so I do. So shift F6, rename application, select all. Just make sure it's right, because sometimes if you have classes that share certain names, let's say you have a API entity, and then you also have an entity class. If you rename entity, chances are it's also going to rename API entity with something something else. Launcher, yeah, that's fine too. Hey, whatever. It's explicit. It tells you exactly this. Both are great names. So what do we want to do here? Well, usually I make sure to set up, you know, the profiles and whatnot. I also make sure to set up profiles, rather default profiles. And then we want to, by the way, this may be a bit too small. Let me increase the size a little bit. Let's go to the editor, let's go to the font size, and wow, it's already 18, holy crap. No, it's 16. Okay, let's increase that to 18. I realized when streaming, watching this through a you know, remotely, maybe a bit smaller than normally. Okay, that looks better. So you want to, what's going on here? Been working too much with other languages. Set up profiles, we need to set up the time zone. And this is important because every backend application should, and really should, I should emphasize this more, it must, well, it doesn't must, but it must use the same time zone. UTC, I believe, is the agreed upon time zone for backend application. If every single backend application on the planet use the same time zone, developers are going to save thousands of hours. I mean, not each developer, but like in, you know, in the grand scheme of things, thousands of hours of those issues. You know, matching time zone. Like, what time zone is this? And then you add wrong time zone. Keep it UTC. Keep it very simple. And then leave it to the front end to set it up how whatever time zone they want. Do they want a Norwegian time zone? Well, that's up to your front end to set up. Do they want a US locale set time zone? Front end, do it. Not us, not backend. No, not us. Same with database, store in UTC. Let's see. Here's the thing, most of this I don't remember in my head. I just know that you should do it. I know where it is, I have an idea, but I still have to kind of figure it out every time I do it. Because you don't really create a new application that often. Let's create some package structures before we jump into this. We are going to separate it by certain concerns, such as a data access layer. That will be a package. That would contain the entities, the database entities, the database repository, everything that has to do with the database itself. Keep it separate from the ones using it. And what else? We need another package. We need an API package. And this is the package where we will put our end REST points. Yeah, UTC is the king. It's the best time zone. Yeah. Let me get a break. Hold on. My throat is drying. Let's see. API. Let's add that. Now that's two. Now those are the most important packages. We may also add a package for support classes, if we may, or even configurations. There are certain shared configurations we may add, but I don't know about them yet, so I'm not going to do it too complicated. I'm just going to keep it simple. REST database. So in the API, we need another package. Now you can name this controller, you can name this REST, some name it resource, whatever. Just make sure you're consistent, so that your other projects also are consistent. That when you're working in a team, and one project is equal to the next, and so on. I don't know. What do I feel like today? REST? I don't know. Maybe, I mean, controller, I guess. Yeah, I'm more of a controller guy. Yeah. Let's see. Calendar. Date and time classes. Yeah, there are lots of things. I think I don't remember which I used. Times? I don't remember. Local data? Was that the one? I think this is the one we use, right? Yeah. In the app, I keep using this one, which is set to UTC. I don't know. I could remember it wrong. We will have to take a look. This is why I have a lot of side projects. I try to put everything in one place, you know. Let's see. And by the way, I don't remember this at the top of my head, how I do this. I'm gonna have to check either my old project or something like that, so I get an idea. But then I can talk about it and explain how it works. And that's how a developer works, really. Let's see. We have API, we have controller, we have a service, services. Now, I keep this singular, so I would name this APIs, I would name this controllers, I would name this services. Keep the S's away. We don't want the S's here. UTC timestamp and time zone, yes. What else? I think that's about it. We may add utils and configs. We'll take that when we get to it. We also need something in DAO. Now there are several ways to organize the data access layers, because you have repositories, you have entities, and you may even have constants that are database constants for certain things, if you would be so inclined. Now those can usually be interfaces. Sometimes they can be just a class with constants. Both are fine, but I believe the recommended way to create constants now is to use interfaces, because that's very helpful for testing and whatnot. Especially since you're working with constants, you know, then you can inject your own, well, set up your own interface that with values. You know, let's not go too much into that. So the way I like to separate and organize my packages in the data access layer folder is by, what should I name this? Entity, table, database? It's by each single thing. So for example, I'm working on a game. In that game, I probably would want a inventory. So why not create a inventory package? Now this can be anything. This can be, you know, person, it can be account, it could be a car, whatever. Depends what you're making. So now we have a DAO.inventory, but we also want something else, not just the inventory. What else? What does inventories have? What is an inventory? Is that the item itself? Or is that a reference to a group of items? I'd say that inventory belongs to, let's say, a player. So there has to be some connection. We're not going to go into the account side of things just yet. We will work on that when we work with Keycloak and get that up the next time we do the stream. So for now, we have inventories. And an inventory may have a lot of items, so we may want to add an item. So there will be a one-to-many relationship. So one inventory to many items, or many items to one inventory. And that will be interesting to set up, because there are a lot of often, especially on Facebook, I see questions about how to setting up the relationship between one-to-many and many-to-one. And it seems to be a common subject of confusion, and especially if you're trying to make it match towards an existing database. And I can understand that pain. I have suffered through that a lot, more than once probably. What else? I think that should suffice in the beginning, because that allows us to create an entity, and it allows us to create an entity that has a list of entities. And we'll see how far we get there. Okay, so this is personal preference. I prefer to work outwards and in. Now, there are ways to work inwards and out, and there's nothing wrong with either of them. I guess it's the way you think that would really determine the best way to do this. And when I say outwards and in, I mean I start with what access do I need? What do I need to get done? So let's figure out what we need to get done. Well, I need to manage my inventory. So we need an inventory controller. Let's add that to our Git, shall we? And the first thing I'm going to begin is by adding a REST controller annotation. Now this little thing is just a bunch of annotation, really, just like packaged together. You have a response bar, you have a controller, documented, and some other stuff. Don't ask me about it. I don't even know. But what this allows you to do is when you create a get mapping function or method, you can then just set the object as the input parameter, and it will take that as the body. If you use a regular controller, you will have to tell it that it is the body manually in each function. Excuse me. Let's see. The spring have built-in ORM. Yes. Definitely. It's funny you mentioned ORM. I haven't, since I started working as a developer, I have never once heard anyone talk about ORM. It's just there. What I have noticed in when I was introduced to an older REST API or rather older database, I don't know, frameworks or something like that, they did use ORM and it looked so complicated. It looked so horrible and difficult. And I was new. I didn't know anything about development, or barely. I mean, I knew how to code in Java. Except I didn't. You know what? I'm sorry for derailing and talking so much. I keep talking. I don't know. It's a flaw. Let me show you something. If I can find this. I'm gonna show you a project I made. When I got my first job as a developer, I'm gonna show you my project. My tutorial project. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'll lose my job. Let's see. How many organizations here? Which one is the right one? I hope it's in Java. Let's see, where is it? No, it's not here. These are too new. Maybe it's in here. Let's go all the way down. There it is. That's my first application that I have written for an interview. Oh, we have found potential security vulnerabilities in your dependencies. Only the owner of the repository can see this message. Except now you can. But don't take me wrong, Gopi. It's not that I'm saying the project was horrible. It wasn't horrible. I mean, even now, I don't think it's horrible. But it's bad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm, in a way, I mean, look at this. Actually, you know what? Don't look at this. Let me go. Let me jump into the code there and give you a little showcase. Now, this didn't use any frameworks. Zero framework. We did everything ourselves. So, for example, here's the main class. We begin the class by adding a copyright message. You know, a lot of text, a lot of comments. You know, 2017. Oh, that should be like that should be less. Pretend it's 2001. When I was, I don't know, how old was I? I don't know, 12 years? 10 years? Anyhow, here we have the class introduction. This is the main class for TVMaze4j. Now you know, you wouldn't know otherwise. I mean, how would you know? And this is the author, you know, it's important to know who made this. I mean, it's not like you can, in your ID you can right click and you know, see who made the code. Well, now I can't because I haven't, how about it here? Yeah. Annotate git blame. Like, now I can see who made this. And here we have TVMaze4j, the main class, amazing class. And here, guess what? This is the API name. Here's the string name. This is the API version, in case you didn't know. And here's the version. And here's the description. And guess what? That's the variable name. And you sure, actually, this is the only thing you may not know. This is the only comment that may be a little beneficial. Just a little bit, but even that can be improved by, you know, changing the method name to initialize SLF4j logger. Oh boy, look at this. Look at this. Fetch information from Maven using app properties resource. Yeah. But you get the point. This is my first application that I made for an interview. And like I said, this is not bad code. Like, it's far from bad code. I have seen bad code, and this is not bad code. It's just not good. You know? It's easy to read, you know, it's simple. It seems to be, you know, doing what it says it does. Then you have a function that says what the boolean check does instead of just adding it in there. You know, and it's spaced well. I'm like new line brackets. I don't use them anymore, but I like them because it makes things more readable, more digestible rather. But look at this, create a TV. Like, the comments is my only issue, I guess, with this. At least so far. There may be other issues, but let's not go too much into that. Let's go back onto the project here. So we created our inventory controller. Now we're back to Spring Boot, by the way. Forget about the bad code. Don't think about it. We added the REST controller annotation. And so in order for us to use this, we should probably set up a request mapping. And this is the path from the root of your, from the address of your application, you know, the IP address, plus the port number. This is where we end up. Let's add, should I add name? Let's just add API and inventory. Inventory, yeah, that's a good one. So for me to access anything in this REST entry point, this is the REST entry point. This is where we enter the application from outside the world when you're not a developer. You would then use, at least locally, if you're on your local machine. I don't know what the IP will be outside, but inside you could use, for example, just as an example, localhost, probably port 8080 because we haven't changed it yet, so it should be using that. API, inventory. Then you would access there, but we haven't really created anything yet, so it's not gonna, you know, do anything. Let's create a simple get mapping. And that just tells it's a get request. So when you do a post request, get request, batch request, blah, 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 it expects a get specifically. So let's create a public, let's return a, you know, let's do it right. Let's return a response entity. And the body is just going to be a string. We're just going to send hello or okay or something like that. You know, test. Why not? And let's return something. Let's return a response entity. It's very common to use response entity as, well, responses when you're responding with an entity. So I'm going to use response entity.ok, which is just the builder for a response entity, with status code 200, which is okay. So because we have specified we want to use a string as a return contents of the response entity, it's okay to add a string here. Hello, testing, 1, 2, 3. So if I save this now and run this, hopefully it's going to work just fine. I don't like that it keeps the same name, so let me edit the configuration so we don't have the API template application name and instead keep the application name. Let's just name this application like so. Everything else should be fine. Let's apply. Let's hit OK. And let's run it. Yeah, there's no frameworks in the beginning when you start developing. I mean, you shouldn't really either, unless you want to be really specialized. I mean, you can probably get away just learning, starting learning a framework, and learn from there. But I'd say it's good to start with the, you know, the crappy stuff. That's stuff you don't normally want to do. Creating your own, you know, database calls and setting up, what's it called? Not webhooks, but it's called web. I cannot for the life of me remember. Web client? No. Connections. Well, I don't know. I remember the name. Manually, because that's a pain. Now you don't have to worry about that. So we are running this now. In the login now, it says Tomcat startup import 8080. So now we know the address, knowing that we also are in our localhost environment. Let's open our browser. Now, because I'm using a GET request, this is the default for all requests in the browser. These are usually GET requests. So if I were to add HTTP, actually you don't even need HTTP, just write localhost 8080 /API /inventory. Now, did we add any specific path to this? No, it's just this. So whatever's in this will make this the default. So here we see hello, testing, 1, 2, 3. Now, we probably don't want this to be a default for this. Let's add a little, you know, let's be a bit more specific. Let's name this test. It's a test function, why not? Let's reload. Do not show me this in the future. I don't need to know about this. I know about it. I'm clicking it on purpose. It's not an accident I'm clicking it. Why would I click it by accident? Oh. There we go. It has restarted. Let's now press enter and see what happens. error. It doesn't exist. Now we don't have any a default error page. We can set it up, I believe, in the templates folder. Is that one of the two folders? You can set up an error page if you want to show something different, but we're not gonna bother with that because our users, you know, they don't do mistakes. If you do a mistake, you're never gonna see this. So let's name this test. And now it works. I mean, that's how easy this is. It's really easy to just set up an entry point. But what if we now were to make some changes, and instead of making changes, let's try, what if we made this a test 2, and this will be a post mapping. What will happen? Would this work if I were to reload this? Ah, yeah. Okay, I see. Yeah, that's a good feedback to the IntelliJ developers if they differentiate you pressing the shortcut and pressing the button. But yeah, that's a good catch for sure. Let's see. So if I were to try 2 now, will it work? No, but you're getting a completely different error now. Now you're getting a status 405. Method not allowed. Because you're trying to do something that's not allowed. And the error message says now, currently, request method get not supported. And this is not a good thing to happen. If this was a public API and you did this, or even, yeah, if you did this in a public API on purpose to test or whatever, and you got this may tell you a lot about the internal workings of the application. So we may want to set up some, you know, some better error messages. And we can do that in the application configuration, because Spring has a lot of amazing configuration we can do in the application. Now here's the thing, I don't remember them at all, but I know they are there somewhere. Maybe if we look a little bit. Error. Ah, here you go. Error. Include bindings, errors, never. That's a default, by the way. All the values you see here are default. But there's something here that's not right, is it? Because we keep getting, we don't want a stack trace. So how do we undo that? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just talking out loud. Because you get the feeling that I know stuff. I don't know anything. Oh. Include binding errors, never. Exception. Include exception false. Now this is strange. We get a 405, but we can't seem to find a way to handle that. So I'm curious about this. Include binding errors. I thought this would be it. False. Include exception false. What's off? Let me try this just to see if this should be default, by the way. I'm just testing right now because I don't know the solution to this. Let's find out. How can we prevent this from happening? I just want a, you know, 404 or something like that, not this. So how do we do that? What happens if I change jaw? Nothing. Okay. So since we have no idea how to do this, let's see. Let's instead do a search. Spring Boot how to disable error, maybe. Let's see what we can find. Usually, Beldung. Beldung? Server error, whitelist, white label enable. Let's try that one. I thought that was default, because when you looked at error here. Oh, is that the one? Oh my god! The one little... Thank you so much! That seems to be it. I knew there was something there, I just couldn't quite find it. We have restarted, let's see if it works. Ah, excellent! Excellent job, Gulpy, thank you so much. This is one benefit by streaming. You know, don't get out there. Don't be afraid to do mistakes, because there are amazing people out there helping you. And we have some error logins as well, that's good. Now this is interesting, circular view path error. Would dispatch back to the current handler URL, your error again. Oh, interesting. So are you telling me the error message itself is trying to redirect? Interesting. Yeah, we don't have an error view. That's seems to be an issue here. Oh, really? I did not know that. I had not heard of white label as an expression to mean open to read before. That's new to me. Even after 4 years? I don't know. I lost count. Circular. Okay, let's see if we can find an error, find a solution to this. Yeah, it seems to be trying to use this, which we haven't set up, and maybe we want to disable it. I don't know. Anyway, what else do we have in the error section here? Include binding errors. Never path. Do we want this? Do I want that? I don't know. Circular view path login. What's the special bug? Let's see what they have found here. It's not really a big issue, but it's a bit annoying. Yeah, I'm thinking we have to create a few advice or exception handlers. We may use Zalando for that. Zalando is usually really good at it. Zalando error exception. Zalando problem, that's the name. No, I believe they have their own Spring implementation of this. Zalando Spring. Ah, amazing. Let's see. Custom error page. White level error page. In this article, we're going to look at how to disable and customize the default error page for a Spring Boot application as a proper error handling depicts professionalism and quality work. Disabling the white level error page. Yes. Excellent. This is really good, actually. Let me, you know what would be nice? If I could collect all these tutorials we're using, or rather these third-party guides somewhere that we're using throughout this. Maybe in the README. Yeah, why not? Let's put it here. Let's add some. Let's make this a sub of the API tab. You know what? No. This will be third-party resources used for development. Maybe a bit of a mouthful. I don't know. The iCard on YouTube? What do you mean? By the way, if I miss a few messages, please just repost or tell me to read, you know, above. Let's see, how was the... Was it like this? Like this, I think? I think it was like this, right? So this is the URL, right? Spring Boot custom error. Yay, that's right. I'm a bit unsure what you're talking about. The last thing you posted was the a link to this, and then you suddenly wrote, yeah, and also the iCard on YouTube later. I don't know what that said that you were replying to. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's see. We can achieve the same result by excluding the error MFC auto configuration beam. Or by adding this annotation to the main class by excluding, yeah. Let's see, displaying custom element. Yeah, we have to create in HTML. Why not? Why not just use this? Why make our own? Now we are using the Thymeleaf template engine, so it does seem I need Thymeleaf for this. Can I not do that? I would love not to. I would love to avoid using another dependency if I'm not really going to be using it actively, except an error page. Something went wrong. Go home. And to clean up the code, what I'm pressing is left control, shift, alt, and L. And then I select rearrange code as well, because I like to keep everything consistent. That seems fine. It looks fine. You go home, you go to root. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Except this is the page when something goes wrong, so something is wrong with that. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. Like, I'm confused. Why are you telling me? Where is it? There. Since we are using, how do you? Are you assuming I'm using TimeLive? I mean, maybe I have to. I don't know. Let's find out. Where's my website? There it is. I guess I do need TimeLive. /error. Could it be that it needs a new folder? No, it does seem that I may need the resources templates directory. All the up spring. Yeah. We have to /error. But does that mean in the folder? Let me try out. Let's do a little, trial and error. To find out whether this is the right choice or the wrong choice. I don't know. What happens now? Nothing. Okay, it doesn't like it. So let's try to add TimeLive then. Let me delete the error folder if I can. There we go. Move this back. Hold on. I think I remember something. Yeah, no, it doesn't work. TimeLive it is. Error path. Oh yeah. No, really? It should be the default though. The default is /error. Just for fun. Let's see what happens if I were to add this dependency. Because I have a little feeling that we may need that. You would think not, but I don't know. Refreshing Maven dependencies by clicking that little thing there. You can also go to Maven and select this to refresh dependencies if you add new dependencies and it doesn't recognize. What's gonna happen now? Well, now it works. Now it redirects to the error page. Oh, home. How did I do this? How did I do this? Go home. Well, I agree, it's weird, but it works, so I'll let it go. At least now we don't have any errors anymore, so that solves our problem, even though we are adding a dependency. I don't know why it needs this. I don't understand it as much because I haven't used TimeLive as much as myself. I think I have used that when I was setting up a Vue test tool for a backend project I worked on for a while. It took a long time to test the project, so I made a GUI for the testers, which they appreciated. So we saved a lot of time by doing that. Okay, something went wrong, but that's because let's go back to our project. I know I keep sidetracking a little bit. But that's fine, it's a part of the process, it's a process. It's not just A to Z, it's A to, L to B to C and to D, or B, or C. Okay, so what do we want? Let's go back. We know it works, we have now an idea of how it is set up. Now this doesn't work because we don't do a post map request when we go via the browser. We will have to use a tool or something that allows us to specify we want to use a post request. Now for my work, when I'm working with APIs, I use Postman. There are Chrome extensions I believe you can use that may make it easier for you, so you wouldn't have to download a third-party tool. But that is really up to you. Just make sure you have a tool you can test. What should I say? APIs. by creating our own request. So for example, we want a get test request, and this is something we will store. So when you download and install Postman, you can choose whether or not you want to log in or not. You can skip if you want. That's really up to you. But you can just create a new collection by pressing plus button, and in the new collection you press it and you select add request. Then you get here. Then you set the name of what you're going to call this. This is whatever. It doesn't matter. This is just what you use to identify what this is. So test request forget. Forget. And then we add the URL, the request URL. I can just use localhost 8080/API/inventory/test. It's a GET request after all, so if I do a send, it should say hello, testing 1, 2, and 3. And we have some additional info about the request. So we have our headers. We are receiving a content type of plain text plain, the content length, and so on and so on. And other headers set by the Spring application by default. And usually we don't have to mess with that unless you want to add your own headers, and there's no problem doing that as well. That's no problem. Let's create our second request now. Let me duplicate this, and we're gonna name this something else. Apparently we found a Postman bug. Interesting. Let me close all the tabs. There it is. So this is a test request for post. Then I would name this post. Let's say localhost API inventory tests. So if I do a post now, even though we don't send anything, and usually, actually with post requests you should send something. Don't use post unless you're sending something. Don't use it to make a hacky solution. You avoid that. Insomnia REST API client. Yeah, you can do that with Postman too. If you want to do a lot of, I would like to say Gatling gun tests, you can do that. It does require some scripting knowledge, and you will have to read up on that. I haven't used that as much, and I don't remember how, but I know you can. As well as you can set variables, and you can do calculations. So for example, you can set a sequence of events. You can create test set. So for example, you can have a test set which is create new user or log in, which will require first to authenticate. That will be one request, and 2 requests, 3 requests, and so on. And you will store the data you get from the request and move along. You can do all of that. It's really cool once you start using it. I haven't used that for this yet, but we will probably end up doing that at some point. So let's do a post request, and we get the same response because we have the same data in the post mapping. So we know everything works, and you should have an idea of how this is set up now. We have a GET request, a POST request, we have other types of requests. So if you're familiar with REST in general, you will have an idea of what's going on here. But we are still using port 8080, and we probably want to do some configuration to avoid that. So let's go to application YML. And if you don't remember the path, which no one should waste their brains on, let's just start entering port and see what we get. Here we have the first suggestion, which is server port. So I can see that by default it's 8080, so I'm pretty sure surely say that this is 8080. So let's change this to something else. I like this number, 13,001, or whatever, 12,000, 11,000. Who cares? They do recommend nowadays when you create your apps to use a higher number. I don't know. I could be wrong. It's just something someone told me. So let's just use 1301. Now, if you are setting up your own database, if you're setting up Postgres, if you're setting up, I don't know, I cannot think of anything right now, Oracle or whatever, you can set that database up port to be, let's say, 13,000. It's the most innermost part of your system. It's the deepest part. So the way I'm thinking it when I'm setting up ports is how far out and in are we? Where are we in the relationship to the rest of the world? Now an API is usually closer to the end with the users, but we don't really have anything. This is the API to the database. So I would put the database to 13,000 and set this to 13,001, especially if they are directly connected to each other, or what should I say, the database is for this application alone. If, however, you're sharing a database, let's say an Oracle SQL database, with many applications, then I would not do that. Even if that database had this port, I would make sure that we have our own unique, what can I say, that our systems, the systems that the API is working with and interacting with, would have their own like 2 or 3 digit that belongs to that system. So for example, if we have a system to produce coupon codes or whatever, that may have a data access layer class, or not service rather, it may have some utility servers, probably not utility service, but just an example. They have a lot of different things, components in one box that belongs to this type of project. Then we would set, for example, 14,000 can be like the main, or 1400 rather, can be the main 3 digit that defines that this is the project we're working on. So when anyone says any port that starts with those 3 digits, they would know this is the project we're working on. Keystroke widget, interesting. Is that a thing? Actually, there is a reason I have not done that. There's a really good reason I have not done that. The reason I have not set up any keystroke widgets is because I keep writing my password. And it would be very embarrassing if I just, forget about it. I just go to the right side and see, oh, I have to log into GitHub. That's my concern. But if I were to make a video out of this, and maybe we will, then I could probably do that. That's a good idea. I like that. And that's why I keep trying to say what I'm typing. So I find it amazing that there are streamers that show their, the keyboard when typing. Like, first of all, why? Why are they showing? Why do they have a camera with the keyboard instead of just adding an app? And my second concern is, what happens when they write their passwords? Do they never write their passwords? I mean, I could just open a. No, I couldn't. I would have to write it at some point. I mean, I guess I could open the keyboard, the keyboard app, whatever, and press with the mouse. But even that, it's a bit awkward. But yeah, it's the issue. It's an issue with this. Okay, but we have changed the port to 13,001. Let's reload and just confirm that it works. It says right, and it is. It's perfect. So now we have to change our post request as well, so we make sure always use that. So it should work. Yes. And then the GET request, it should be the same. Apparently our GET request did not get saved, so let me save that, change that, and hit send, and now it works. Pressing Ctrl S to save. Yeah, no, Password Manager is definitely safer than... The safest thing you can do is using a Password Manager. It would seem it's not, but as long as you have one unique password for the Password Manager itself, and it's not stupid like your name, birthday, dog's name, birthdays, name, last name, etc., year of birth, then you should be safe. Okay, let's move a little bit. We're taking a bit long, and I apologize. I mean, that's basically what my streams are. Chilling, relaxing, talking, thinking out loud. I guess we can keep this for now. Let's just leave them alone. Except the post map. I don't want the post mapping. What do we need? We need a, we need a create inventory. We need to be able to, update inventory. We need to be able to delete. Read inventory. And lastly, we need to be able to delete inventory. And this is also known as a CRUD. We want to create a CRUD from this. And if you want a simple CRUD, you can use the dependency we have in Spring Boot, which is the Spring Repository dependency, I think it's called. Because then it can automatically set it up for you when you create an entity and tag it as such. But I'm not going to do that because I feel, I don't know, I like to make sure it happens the way I want it to, I guess. I'm not used to it, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe when I get used to it, we'll look more into that. And it's not that difficult to do this at all. Let's see. Okay, create. How do we create? Well, we do a post. We have to send something, right? And this is the API inventory. Do we need to have something? No, we don't need anything. Implicit, explicit. What do you mean? Oh yeah, explicit programming, yeah. Instead of implicit, which would be REST controller, REST repository, Spring repository. That's true, but not always. I mean, like I'm saying, don't be afraid to reuse code. Don't be afraid to find resource that you know exists, because you're not going to remember everything, and there are going to be times you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it's the same thing that's complicated. What's important is that you know how to find the information you need. These are just placeholders. Now, in order for us to take in something, we need to create an inventory. DTO. This is different than an entity. Keep that in mind. No, not really. I guess reusing explicit and implicit is a bit different, I guess. But what I mean is, you can reuse explicit code, you know? Let's press Alt and Enter to get the window to suggest things. Now, I want to create a class. So where do we want this? Now, this is a DTO. It's a transference object. This belongs to the API, not the database. So it should remain in the API folder. But what folder? We could create a DTO folder. We could. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, or if you want a subfolder in the control. Now, it doesn't really matter. We can move this anyway later on if you find a better place. Can I create this by pressing OK? Did it work? Yes, it did. So now we have a DTO folder, which I'm just placing this for now. Let's see, what should we add? What shall we add? What does our inventory have? What are we gonna get when we create something? We're not gonna get an idea. No. Well, we need the ID of the player that's gonna get it though. So it's not the ID of the inventory itself, it's just the ID of the player. Remember, the inventory is a collection of items. It's not a single item. Keep that in mind. And I should write that as a comment. Now, this is context commenting. You wouldn't know this unless this was written there, or you already know it somehow. I'm not really for commenting at all. If you can avoid it, avoid it. But if it's helpful, add it. Private long player ID. What else? Now we don't have a player ID. We're not going to do that just yet. We may add that later. But for now, let's just leave it empty. What else? What else do we need to get? We need to get some data, perhaps a list of items, or perhaps not. Perhaps we don't even have anything. Perhaps all we have is the player ID. Because if you think about it, an inventory is just a reference to a bunch of items, and when you want to create an inventory, you will probably just create a player ID. You have an inventory with ID, let's say 1, with the belongs to the player with ID 3. I mean, that's really all you need. And then, when you create items, you would then, on each item, say that this item belongs to the inventory number 1. You wouldn't mention the player. Who cares about the player there? So, that should be enough. You could add maybe a comment, or maybe we'll have multiple inventories, but even that can be done by just adding several inventories with the same player ID, because this is not the idea of the inventory. So essentially all we are going to receive when we create an inventory initially is just the player ID that's gonna own, or rather the player ID that's gonna own it. Now that is not the end of it. This is a controller, by the way. This is just for creating. These are just first step out of many to set up. Because once you have inventory, you will then need to add items, right? You can't just create an inventory unless the player is completely new and join the server for the first time. And there you have the use case. First time player on the server, we need the inventory for this player. Set it up. Which is probably one step in a chain of events. Let's see. Now that's enough. Let's make sure it's used. Yeah. And the reason, even though it's just one item, it's fine to use this because we may add more things later on. And like I said, this is not scripted. I'm not planning this out. I just coding on the fly. So what do we want to return? Oh, okay for now. What do I want to do? Well, I want to create this inventory somehow. And I want a service to do so. So I want a sort of, you know, inventory service create. And then maybe I'll send the inventory in there. And maybe I want some sort of response, right? I mean, how else would I know what to respond with? Now, there are several ways you can do that. You can return a response object. You can create a sort of response object if you want. And that's not a bad thing to do things. It's completely fine to do that. Or you could return a response entity that contains the inventory. But frankly, I don't think that's a really good thing because it shouldn't be the inventory service's responsibility to determine if the entire thing is okay or not, because this may just be one out of many services we're calling as part of a process, or a process of creating inventories, or, you know, whatever. Now in this case, it is enough. We know you're just gonna create inventory. We're not gonna create inventory, you know, jog around the house, you know, buy some food. We're not gonna do a lot of other things. But I'm just talking about it out loud so you're aware of it. In this case, what I want to do is I want to return the inventory back out to it. That way, you would know it went okay. And if for whatever reason it failed, I would want a null to be returned, so I wouldn't get any response. Which means I would then return nothing back because something went wrong. And when something went wrong, I would change the status from 200, which is okay, to something else. I don't know, 400, depends what's wrong. I don't know. Let's see. Let's return an inventory DTO. DTO response. Why not? And we'll just, you know, slam it in there. Why not? But what if it's empty? What if it's null? Jeez. Well, then something went wrong. So we failed. We couldn't create that for whatever reason. I can't imagine a reason for that would be. The only reason I could possibly imagine would be if the long player ID was missing or invalid. But why do it here? No, I'm not gonna do that there. I'm gonna do it in the player inventory DTO. I want to be able to make sure it's valid before we start working with it. Why waste our time in the services? So knowing that I want to make sure we don't have a value of null. I don't want a value that is smaller than 0. What's the right way to do this? Is it size or is it length? Is it min? Is it max? I don't remember, honestly. Let me find out. Let me try min and see what it says. This is minimum value, isn't it? Let's download source, take a look, shall we? Let's see. Yes, returns value, the element must be higher or equal to. So we can set the minimum value to be 0, right? Perfect. Knowing that it's 0, does that mean it can be null? Let's also make sure it cannot be null. Do we have any sort of validation for null here? Is it going to fail? I don't know. I honestly don't know. So we're gonna try that out, shall we? So in here, we have to annotate this, otherwise you're not going to validate it by default effort. So I'm going to add the valid annotation in front of this. Now this is the body of our request, by the way. If you didn't have a REST controller, you would have to add a request body annotation right there, I believe. Let's see. Let's create our service. Let's see how far we get before we get any errors when we run this. Let's create something. Create field inventory service in inventory control is fine. Yeah. No, we're gonna create this. Inventory service. This doesn't exist yet. Let's select the end of this, or maybe middle. Does that work? Yeah, middle. Press anywhere on that. Press Alt and Enter, and you get this little menu up, and select Create Class. So this is the service. So we have a service controller we can use, right? Right? Yeah. Let's add it in right there. Service. Hit OK. And add it. Let's add the Spring Boot service annotation. What else do we need? What does the service need? Well, it needs the function we want to use, right? So let's select the function. Press Alt and Enter again. Alt Enter is a magical key combination in IntelliJ, by the way. You can use it for anything. You can. There's no limits. Create method create in inventory service. Yes, please. You set up the response. It sets up the input. Oh, everything is good. Yeah, it's fine. Naming is good. Everything is good. Yeah, return null. That's fine. So if I run this right now, what's going to happen? I'm curious. It's not going to do anything. It's going to return a null in the OK, I believe. Now, what I'm curious about is the body. Is this going to validate this and make sure this is correct when it's set to null or not? I don't know. And as usual, I keep pressing Ctrl-Shift-Alt-L so I get this up, so I can reformat everything. You can also press Alt-Control-L to just do it instead of a pop-up. I like the pop-up because sometimes this unchecks for whatever reason, and I don't like that. I keep it on because it keeps the code consistent. Let's see. Let's run it. And see what happens. Now what's happening here is we don't have any URL here, or URI here. We are going to be using this path, and we're going to create a post mapping. So the default post mapping to this request mapping is going to result into running this. Regardless of the method name. The method name doesn't matter. You can name this for everyone. I did not know that when I began learning this, by the way. This should still work. Let's now change this to the create inventory for a player. Now I'm not sending anything. What's gonna happen? We should get an error or something. Internal server error, null pointer. Interesting. I'm getting one of these now. Null. Oh, null pointer. Oh, interesting. Why is it null? Oh, it's null because we forgot to auto-wire it. Hello, Fashion Killer. Welcome to our Java Spring Boot coding session. We forgot to auto-wire this class. And the way we do that is, well, there's several ways to do that. One is the bad way. This is the bad way of doing that. I keep saying this is the bad way of doing it. It's gonna work, but don't do that. This is even Spring tells you this is the bad way to do it. It's not recommended. Don't do it. Instead, we're gonna make this into a private final field. And what this is gonna do is gonna tell us that we are going to need a constructor that takes in this parameter. So if I now rerun this, the way we have changes right now. Let's open Postman, take a look. If I rerun this again, we should get a different error. Well, no error, we just get nothing. That's good. So now it's auto-wired. Spring recognizes that this is something we have created as a server. It's a bean, essentially, a Spring bean. A Java bean. A bean. And it works, but we don't want this. Look at this. This is just nothing important is happening here. So let's remove the constructor. And knowing that we have something called Lombok, we can add a request. What was it? Constructor. Required arc constructor. That's the name. Required arc constructor. That will automatically create a constructor that takes in the required variables. That will be variables that are not set, that are private and final. That's the requirement. That means if I were to make a private, I don't know, object doof, this would not be part of the constructor because this is not required. If I were to do a all arc constructor, however, then this and this would be created as a constructor. Yeah, you don't see this. So this is in a way implicit. So this is the good part of implicit, I guess. Let's undo that. Make sure it's back to required arc constructor. Let's make sure we have a private final on this. So now this is being added as a Spring Bean as a part of the process of setting up all the Spring classes or components, I guess. Let's rerun and confirm it works. Here we go. It works. There's no error anymore, and that's good. No null pointer. But what I did notice is that we are not getting any errors. I want this to tell me that you screwed up, because there's nothing. There should be no value here. So let's see what happens if I add not null, maybe? I don't know. I don't remember. Even though I've done this a lot of times, there are so many variations of not null that I have no idea. Like, maybe, how about nullable? Yeah, I think it's not null. Let's try it. Here we go, here we go. Now we get the error. So we need an explicit not null because adding a minimum of 0 does not ensure it's not null. So there's two separate checks. Let's open and take a little look here. We received a status 400. This means bad request. Well, it says right there, bad request. Now I don't like this. So I want to fix this a little bit. I want to clean this up. I would like to add my own error responses, error handling, error advice, exception advice, I think they're called. But let's get a little ahead before we do that. This is fine while we're developing.
I never saw that film before.
So now we know if we don't have a valid value here, it should check. Let's also try by creating and setting in an object with less than 0. So in the body, change this to raw, I think. Yeah, raw, and then change this to JSON. And this is Postman, by the way. Keep in mind, Postman app. So when you make a post request, you have to send something in the body, and possibly add headers if you need. So we want a player ID. So using JSON syntax, it will look something like this. Now, because we are sending a value, a integer, we don't need any quotation mark, but I think they can handle that as well. Let's try adding -5. Control S to save this request, so we don't have to do that again if it crashes. And now we have another bad request. What errors do we have now? Interesting. It seems that it's still null. Player ID. Is that wrong? I'm curious. Let me test something. Maybe I'm mistaken with the request body. Hold on. Let me add request body on this one. Take a look. Let's find some music. There we go. Okay, let's try it again. What the hell? I am confused. Maybe is this wrong? No. Really? Really? Cool. Maybe try adding this one. Just test. Huh. Not null. Okay, I'm curious to see what's happening here. This is really strange. I don't know the answer to this. Let's see if we can find out. What is wrong? Must not be null. Player ID. We have that. Oh. Hold on. Oh, wait. What? Something is strange. Why are there two of them? It must not be null. Included the player ID. No. Almost not null. I have no idea. This is strange. Let's see. Let's see. Sorry about the moving of the screen. One of the downside of having a wide screen is that sometimes we have to move. If everyone used widescreen, we wouldn't have this problem. Let me do a little search. Usually they have some answers here. Let's see. Spring, boot, request, body, JSON. Show me. Wait, no. Yeah, this is a test. This is a test. I did this before. It's the same error. It's the same. Let's see. I'll accept arbitrary JSON request body in there. Let's see. That's wrong. I've forgotten something. Let's see. Yeah, no, it's really strange. Maybe I forgot something. Maybe I should. It should be fine. And this is the life of a developer. You keep doing the same thing over and over, and suddenly something that you have done many times just doesn't work. You don't know why. And it's usually because you forget something. It's something small. That's not the one I wanted. What was it? Response body. Jesus. Hold on, did I use a request body in the other one? Hold on, let me full screen this. Undo a few times. I did! Response body, not request body. What? No, it should be request body, right? Yeah, request body there, response body here. But no, we don't need response body because we are sending in this. Unless this is what I forgot. Maybe, I don't know. Let's try it out, shall we? It shouldn't be that though. And it should infer that this is a JSON. I mean, it's a request body. Yeah. What can be wrong with this? Let me move this to one side so you can see everything at once. I'm aware of that, but why? Not null. What the heck? What the heck? Just for fun, let me try this. No, make it valid. Let's make it 1. Yeah, it's still bad request. What the hell? I have no clue. Let's find out. What should we search for? Spring Boot REST API. We'll probably find something here. Don't tell me. Yeah, no, it's right. It's right. It is right. Yes. Did I forget some dependencies? Maybe. Resource representation class. We have this. We have oh! I think I see what's wrong. You forgot to getters and setters. You know? It's a little important. I'm hoping. Cross your fingers. Cross your fingers. Yay, it works. This is what I mean. Like, no matter how long you code, you're still gonna do mistakes like this from time to time. Hopefully not, you know, live and, you know, with people watching or being able to see a recording of what you have been done. But, you know, normally, you know, when people don't know about it. Okay, well, we solved that. We got this to work now. So if I add -1, it should give us an error message, I hope. Yes. Because now it is not smaller. It's not minimum 0. But if you add 0, it should still work. Yeah, good. So we have our validation set up. We didn't add any code for this. Just added some few annotations. But I don't want this. Look at this crap. We don't want to look at this, and especially in longer classes, longer DTOs, longer entities that has a lot of variables. Because this doesn't give you anything of value unless it does something extra. For example, something we can do, if I did like this, if player ID is null, then I could do return -1. Now this is something extra. In this case, what I would do is I would remove the setter from this. I would remove the setter and add the annotation from Lombok. Once again, I would then set the setter annotation. So we then automatically get the setters for all the variables that are in our that are not set in our class, as well as we can show exactly what we need to care about. This is not something you can just assume. If this was in the middle of a bunch of getters and setters, you may not know about it. You may not even notice it. You may not even know it's there. But if you have implicit setters and getters via annotation, you will know exactly what it is to care about. This we don't care about. This we do care about. But we don't want this behavior. So let's just remove all of them. And not just set getter. And not just set a you know, setter either. Or getter and setter. Let's replace this with a data annotation. Now this is a DTO after all. So we can benefit from this. A data annotation, which is also a Lombok annotation, is just a bunch of annotations in one, really. If I can find the list of that, there should be a comment somewhere. Here it is. This is the equivalent of a getter, setter, requires our constructor, a toString, and an equals and hashcode annotation. And all of these are Lombok. They provide you getters, they provide you with setters, they provide you with a constructor that takes in the private final variables variables that haven't set a value on them, haven't been set a value on them. And we have a toString, which provides us with a clean and nice to read toString. When you print this class out, you will not have just a class name, code, something. You'll have something readable. And an equal hashcode, which is always nice to have. So now, if I were to restart, it should work just well. Here's the thing. The end users, when you compile this, it's not noticeable at all. No one would know it's there. Only developers have to deal with Lombok. No one else. So if a higher up, if a business person tells you shouldn't use Lombok or because we don't see the... First of all, what do they know? Cut this, edit this out, Ivan, me in the future. But really, this is up to your developers, your team. It should be up to you and your team to decide whether or not to use this. People some are paranoid and think like, oh, the worst case scenario is you use something that works and then you update and then you break everything. That's the worst case scenario I can imagine. Oh, no. Worst case scenario is someone hijacks Lombok and you upgrade to a version that's corrupted or you know, infested or something, then yeah, I can imagine that. So make sure you set your version, I guess. But this is yeah, it really depends on your team. Just download the dependency directly so you have control if you need to. but this gives us a lot of value as developers in terms of readability, in terms of maintainability, and probably more that I can't think of right now. I mean, look at this. This is the entire data class. Let's see. But yeah, in runtime, it because of the plugins we have, it compiles the full class. This is not what you see during compilation. I can show you actually. Target, I think it's target classes, Ivan's got the API. This is the DTO, so we can find it here. So if we open this right there, this is how the class really look. Because of our annotation, we still have our Javax annotations, minimum, as well as not null. They're still there. But if we have an empty constructor, because we have the required arg constructor, and we don't have any private final, so this is fine. Empty constructor, and we need that anyway. Then we have a getter. It just returns. We have a setter, it just sets. We have an equals method, we have an can equals, hash code, and a toString. What's this though? I can't. Can equals. Okay, this seems to be something in here used. That's fine. And it generates a readable toString as well. We have a player inventory that with the values inside each variable. So there's no sign of Lombok whatsoever. Just for us developers. It's a secret tool we have to make life easier. When you're working with at least Java. If you there are other languages that are working improving this, removing boilerplate code, or create some sort of, well, I don't know if I would say annotation, but they create a framework, not a framework, a language, I guess, that allows you to set up, tell it this is this type of class, and it has getters and setters or whatever. I'm not sure which language that is. Is that Kotlin? Maybe I think of Kotlin. I don't remember. I haven't used Kotlin as much. But I would love to play around with Kotlin a bit. That would be pretty cool. And I'm using the streams as an excuse to work and have a little work discipline, because I did notice that once I started streaming, I have a little more discipline doing what I want to do and what I feel I should do. So it's a win-win, you know. Okay, let me close all the tabs. Clean slate. Let's begin from anew, right? So in the controller, we now have a create inventory post mapping, and it calls a method on the inventory service, which is called create. This does nothing right now, so let's make it do something. Let's see if we can make this work. So in create, how do we create an object, an inventory in our database? Now that means we will have to, you know, we would need a database of sorts, right? Let's look at our application YML. Currently, we don't have any of the GPA configuration set up, and I don't remember them all. So let's find it online. That's what I do. Spring Boot H2 configuration. Maybe we'll find some. Let's see. First result. Spring Boot with H2 database. Well done. Well done? Well done? Well done. Anyhow, let's just scroll down, find what we need. We have this. We have this. We don't have this. Where is this? Also, side note, don't just copy paste everything you see on the internet. This is using the other format. This is the nasty application.properties. Let's fix that. Data source URL. There it is. Let me just take this. Now this we're gonna change, but let's keep it for now. Let's add the driver class name, which is the org h2 driver. It's suggested for you, even that. I love it. We need a username. We don't need it, but let's set it. I think the default, yeah, SA. That's the default, typical H2 username. Password, you know, empty or whatever. And we need our platform, a GPA database platform. GPA database. It tells our Spring, I think. Is it Spring or is it the ID it tells? It tells Spring. I don't know who it tells, but it tells someone that this is the format of our queries and whatnot. Also, one great side effect with streaming is that by talking out loud, it's like you're having a pet turtle you're talking to, or a duck, if you're, you know, those people. And you say it out loud so you can hear yourself what you're saying, and you can realize what you don't know. So if you're trying to explain something and you don't know something about what you're explaining, you're uncovering what you don't know. You know? H2 dialect. Haha. Hibernate. That's the one. Rubber duck. I don't have a rubber duck. I have a... I don't know if you can hear this. Hold on. It's like a plastic, hard plastic turtle. Yeah, this is now an in-memory database. I don't want that. I would like a file to save a little file to make so we can make it persistent if we want. And I also want to make sure we set up the configuration to do so. Oh, here we go. Here's the example. Yeah, by design, the in-memory database is volatile, and the database will be lost when we restart the application. We can change that behavior by using file-based storage. To do this, we need to update the data source URL. Let's do that. This is the one I wanted. Copy this. Data. I don't know. I think this is the folder in here, isn't it? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Database. H2. The API H2 DB. That's fine. This should be the name, the file name, in a folder database. So I think this is the root here. Maybe. We'll see. Database operations. Carrying out CRUD operation with H2 within Spring Boot is the same as with other SQL databases. And of the roles in Spring, yeah, blah blah. Okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna do this. We're not gonna create data ahead of time. That's boring. We could do this. I am not, because we are gonna create APIs to give us all this info. What else? Do we want this? I don't know. I will leave that default. Yeah, I think we have most of what we need, but we still haven't set up some specific information we may want to have, such as generate DDL. No, generate DDL auto with Hibernate. I think that's the one. This will tell us what we do when we start up. Keep in mind, and please don't mess with this in production, ever. In fact, just don't have it there, unless you have a really good reason for having it there. By default, it's not gonna mess anything up, no matter where you connect to. But if you add it and change it to something crazy, you know, such as create and drop, for example, that's gonna mess up the database when you shut off. When you shut off, guess what? The database is gonna bye-bye. The Spring ORM support data model migration, like when you change classes and you want to keep the data. When you change classes, I want to keep the data. You mean when you change classes in, let's say you create an item entity and you change the data in there, it's gonna change the database? Am I understanding that correctly? I think update does that. But update, I don't think it deletes anything. If I were to, we can test that. That's a good idea. Let's test it out. I haven't thought about it. Luckily, because I haven't needed it. But it's a really good question. Because we are doing this though, I probably want to add the console. It should be a console example here somewhere. There it is. Spring H2 console enabled. You gotta love Spring. Spring has answers to everything. H2 console enable is by default false. Let's press enter and set this to true. Now there were some other properties, weren't there? So what is this? We can change the path. We can change the setting trace. I don't know. I think the default is fine. It prevents trace output. We can also disable remote access. Yeah, no, that for sure. We shouldn't allow remote access. Holy crap. I hope this is default. I really hope that is default. Please. Web, allow. Yeah, it's default false. Good. We don't have to mess with that. So adding true, it should be enough. Yeah, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try that. We're gonna take a look for ourselves. Because I don't know for sure. I would like to know though. But before we can even get that far, we need to create the repository. We need to create a database entity. So before I do anything else, it's gonna be red, and that's fine. You just, you know, put it to the side a little bit. In our inventory package, in our data access layer package structure, we're gonna create a new Java class. This is gonna be the entity. So I'm gonna name this inventory. I'm not gonna name it inventory entity, because this is the inventory. This is the inventory. Whatever this is the answer. So when you're referring to inventory, you're referring to the values we have in your database. The inventory itself, which includes the ID, it includes the player ID. Just keep that in mind. And this is in the data access layer folder package. This could be a separate service altogether, or a like a support service or something that you can, well, not a service, a library, a dependency. That's the word I'm looking for. A dependency. It can be done liquid base. Oh, I have not used liquid base, but that's migration version control. Yeah, that's the one. I have not used that, but I thought that was like commercial or something, because I did look at that and I did want to kind of try it out. But I got the impression. Yeah, open source does not mean free, by the way. Maybe it's free. No, I feel like I read somewhere that something gave me the impression that I have to pay for this if I want to use this. You know. I may look at that at some point, but not now. But anyway, let's try it anyway. Let's try it. Entity. And by the way, there's nothing wrong naming this inventory entity. Like so. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. So we need the private long ID. You can also use UIDs if you want to, but I'm just going to use an ID. Now this ID. Now there are discussions, there are concerns using and sharing a backend database ID with the public. Some recommend that not only do you have a database ID, but you have a public ID. So you would have a, I don't know, maybe a DB ID or something like that. And what I mean is, this would be the database ID, and this can change. If you were to migrate this inventory table, which will be created somewhere else, the IDs themselves may change. This may become something completely different, and that may have very serious unintended consequences. If anyone were to, let's say, save a URI with a, ID as part of it, and you use a database ID, that's gonna mess everything up. It's not gonna work. It's gonna break. So it's something to think about. You may want to have a public ID that you share with the public. So no matter what database you are and whatever you do, it's gonna be constant. It's never gonna change no matter what database you're in. And that's what I would name the ID, and I would keep a eternal. I don't know what I would name this. OID maybe, or UID, maybe UID. I don't know. I haven't checked that much into it. It's just something I'm aware of. I haven't gotten to the point where I had to act on this yet, but I'll probably will. And this is something we should probably look at, and I would love to do that for this template actually. I'm a little unsure how I would do that though. I could just set a eternal ID and name it I don't know, IID or something. Let's do a little search. I'm sure people have discussed this all over the place. Internal public ID for Database rows? I don't know what to search for. There has to be something I can search for. Public ID, I don't know. Public internal ID. No, that's not gonna work. Database. There we go. Maybe this can help us. Is it safe to use document IDs? I don't know if this is gonna work. Document abuse. Yeah, no, this is something specific to MongoDB, it seems. I can't seem to find it. If I ever find it, I will see if I can't get it up. Yeah, no, UID is great. Oh yeah, good idea. Dude, that's a good idea. Perfect idea. Let's do that. I love it. I love it. Let's make ID be the database ID, which is going to be internal. And let's create a what's a string UID. UID. And this is going to be the public one. No, I don't like that. Let's name this ID. And let's name this something else. Internal ID. IID. Any suggestions? UID? But UID can be misinterpreted as the UUID. OID maybe, I don't know. Internal ID, why not? Let's just keep it long and explicit. It doesn't have to be small, I mean... Yes, my idea, that's a good idea. I'm not gonna name it that, but it's still a good idea. Let's see, why is it telling us that everything is bad? Ah yes, we should have a primary key. Yeah, why not? Let's add, no, not key, ID. And let's do some generation. Let's generate a value, I believe. Is that right? At least now we're coming to the things I don't remember. I never remember this. Strategy, generation type, identity. I believe is the right one I want. Right? Let me jump in. Oh yeah, by the way, in case you're not completely familiar with IntelliJ, when I jump into things, I hold control and press the thing I want to go into. So if I want to know about the long, class, then I can control click into it and get documentation. And sometimes, such as now, when I select the identity, I want to know more about that, control clicking in, it's decompiled, which means we don't have the very friendly and readable source file. It's just the class. It's just the minimal requirements. So if I add download sources, it should give us documentation, which is this here. Let's see. Indicates that the persistence provider must assign primary keys for the entities using a database identity column. That's fine, that's no problem. Now there's also auto. I used auto a lot. Here's the thing, we don't do anything with UUID, because UUID will be the public ID, not the database ID. What I mean, or you know what, you're right. No, I'm bad. That may be that is less user friendly for APIs using UUID. I don't really need to use UUID at all. What I mean is that the most important part is just separated. They can both be integers or longs. That's fine. Something wrong with that. If you have a lot of data, I believe UUID is a little bit slower. You have to, your database has to be optimized for that, making sure they are set as indexes and whatnot. So if you're working with Oracle, you would set up an index. I heard something. Let me read about auto again. Indicates that the persistent provider should pick an appropriate strategy for the particular database. An auto generation strategy may expect the database resource to exist, or it may attempt to create one. Vendor may provide documentation on how to create resources. Now we can use auto or identity. I think both are fine. I'm thinking auto is better because I don't care if you know how you set it up. Just do it. Now, that's not something you should say during work or business. You should care, of course. You should ask your, unless you're the lead, then you talk about others and tell them, hey, what do you think about, auto, I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, well, it's auto. I like automation. Yeah, but I'm curious. Let's try. Let me think. Give me a moment. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll use stick to long for both. I like UUID. I like it. But there may be unintended consequences. I don't even know if H2 is great at that. Hold on. H2 UID ID. Okay, it seems to work. I want. Let's just use UUID. We're not gonna. Here's the thing. When we create items now, all of them is gonna have a ID, and that's gonna be permanent no matter what we do. What this means is we don't really care about internal ID at all. Besides setting up the relationships between the entities. I mean, hold on. Let me think. Public ID. Yeah, no, I don't like internal. Let's see. We have your ID. We have the internal ID. The point of adding two is just to make sure one remains forever the same. That's the point. So when we refer to an ID, it's never gonna change. Okay, what this tells me is that this internal ID doesn't matter. Who cares? Like, we're never gonna use it. It's just something the database needs in order to find connections. So when you migrate to something else, the connection should still be there, even though it may be in different order. So now I'm wondering, how would it work when I add? Because using the you know what? It's fine. We don't need to do anything. I was thinking it may be a bit complicated because maybe we needed twice two thing on. Yeah, we do need two things on everything then, don't we? But that's fine. As long as we generate something, we keep increasing this one. It should be fine. Let me just search. I'm a little curious. I don't know the answer. I have no idea. Spring Boot. What time is it? Okay, we have half an hour. Jeez, time flies when having fun and talking and having fun. Spring Boot. 2 ID. No, not 2 IDs. ID. Increment. Non-ID. Maybe. No, Chinese or maybe Japanese. I need to know. Wait. Okay, neither. Yeah, you know what? The ID should be an UUID, I think. You know, I have no idea. I have to research. I have no clue. I'm gonna wait for this. I'm gonna write a note. We need to consider the possibility that we may need, for whatever reason, to migrate the database, which may result in new IDs for entities. Having a public and internal ID where the public is never a never changing constant, we can ensure that that links that the public API never changes when it is referring to an entity public ID. That should hopefully be enough to give people understanding what we want to do. This is a big to-do. I don't know yet how to properly do this. I could just try an experiment, but that's gonna take time. And let's move a little bit before we. Let's see. Comment this. There we go. Control and / to do that. So what else? Yeah, we need a column. Well, we don't need that, but if you use that, we can tell the name of the column. It can be ID. If you want. Is that alright? So value, name, ID. There it is. I need a long player ID. So in a way, you know, if you created the ID from the front, you know, the API, that the front end or whatever, when we're creating something, maybe a UID would be fine for that. I don't know. We'll see. Column is gonna be a player ID. Now this I think is the default. If you don't set this, it should be default this way, I think. But frankly, I don't know. Now here's this cannot be nullable, so nullable should be set to false. I think default is true, isn't it? Yeah. That it's grayed out shows you that this is the default value. It's redundant. You don't need this if you wanted to set it to true, so you just set it to false. Because we don't have nullable, and this is by default not nullable, so we don't need to do anything here. We don't need to validate this because this is being validated somewhere else. But yeah, it's fine. Let's see. Why is it? Yeah, ignore this. That's fine. Let's create a inventory repository. Now this is going to be an interface. We're gonna name this the inventory repository. Select add, and let's extend GPA repository. With the first one being the object, the entity we want to create, which is the inventory entity. The second one is just gonna be the long, which is the ID we're using. So if we're using UUID, we have to set UUID here, or a string or whatever. And that's it. You're done. You don't need anything else. So now this entity, oh, that reminds me. Let's not forget the table name. The table name is going to be inventory. I think this is also the default, but no, the default here is going to be inventory entity because we named this inventory entity. So that's why we explicitly tell it that we want it to be named inventory. And that is pretty much it for the database layer. So if you now go back to our API and use our repository, so now if this was its own service, its own API service, we would then have a dependency that refers to the data access layer dependency, and then we could access the private final inventory repository. Because this is the service, this is what commands other things to do things. And now we are getting an inventory and we want to command the repository to save this item somehow. And return the item somehow. But I believe it returns optional, doesn't it? Infer type S for type parameter S is not within its bound. Should extend com blah, blah, blah. What? Oh, is it because of this? Let's add a required R constructor, so this goes away. What's up with this one? I'm curious about that one. I don't know, that's strange. I have not seen this. Infer type S for type parameters. Am I forgetting something? It's possible. I did extend this, right? That should work. Oh! Repository! No? No, it should work even if I don't. Spring Boot is really smart. I don't know, strange. I don't know. Let me try to play and see what happens. Wait. Huh? I am confused. I have no idea why is this work. No idea. Why? Wait. Inventory detail. No, that's wrong. Oh my god. Now I know why. Yeah. Now it makes sense. Because infer type S for the type parameter S is not within its bound should extend blah 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 inventory entity. It tells us right there. I didn't realize that this is not inventory entity. This is the inventory DTO, which means this is where we, do the job with, with the DTO, whatever that is. So what we need to do is we need to create an inventory entity. And then we'll set the what's the name? Set play ready. What? Ah, we forgot the data. Let's see. Setter and getter. Now I don't like to use the data on database entities because that may have unintended consequences, because by using a data annotation or a toString annotation, it's going to be going deep. So if I were to add an explicit one-to-many relationship here by adding a list of something, let's say another entity here, this was another entity, the toString would then generate those entities as part of itself, so it will keep going deeper, and those entities would then generate toStrings on itself. It would be a mess, and you would probably end up with some sort of error. I remember having issues with that. So just add a setter and getter is enough. You may also want to add a serializable ID. I don't remember it, but what was it? But we'll get to that probably next time, because we're gonna take a look at JHipster and see what we can learn from that, because they have really good practices, and that will increase the speed of our development significantly, because we don't have to reinvent everything. Okay, so this works now. There we go. Adding 2 spaces make this the entire to-do. So back to our service here. We want to set the player ID to be whatever this is. You could do it like this. You could do it like this. If you do a lot, then this is just as well. You may send this somewhere else and then set it here. The primary focus of any coding, it should not be to make it short. It should not be to make one-liners. That it should be readability. It should be maintainability. And that's pretty much it. Then you just have to save it. And the great thing about doing this is now we never have to validate. If we were to accept, for example, if we were to accept an inventory entity as part of the API, they could then theoretically also send the ID in the create request. And that means we would have to validate it before we get it, which means either in the service or maybe in the, no, not the control, in the service. You would then validate the inventory entity we received in and make sure it doesn't have ID. And if, for example, this was something received, and if this had an ID and it was not null, I would then return a message. No, inventory you know, ID must be null, you know, and a 400 response, which is a bad request. But we don't have to worry about that. That's the great thing about using DTOs, having something between the frontend and backend, and leaving the control to you or the service that wants to, you know, set up everything. So now we will never have a mistake because we are, well, add a little salt to that, because we are validating this right as we get it. We don't have to validate this over and over again. There are times when you work in bigger projects, you keep seeing the same validation in every single method. Try catch for null or something, check for null. That's a really bad thing to do. Instead, you should separate those areas. Okay, you usually have areas that can be, you know, API layer, it can be service layer, it can be business layer, and so on. Keep the validation where it enters something. So the API is a perfect place to add validation. The database layer is a perfect place to, you know, make sure you don't screw up, I guess. It's like a last resort. But even then, it should never happen there because you're validating here. So keep validation in one place, is what I'm trying to say. Let's add that in there. And let's make sure to return a DTO. And that means we will have to just get this and return a new inventory DTO. As strange as that may sound. And do we want that? Hold on. I mean, do I want to return the ID? No. This may be the perfect opportunity for us. This may be the perfect opportunity for us to also generate the public IDs right here. What I mean is, in the inventory DTO, if we were to have an ID, that would be the public ID, right? A public, long public ID or something. You could have that generate, or even better, let's make a string UID. This is all. Players, users won't have to concern themselves about UUID. They shouldn't care about it. This is an API for something that's going to be using that. Not people, not players. I don't know what to name this. We should name this ID, I guess. Why not? Public ID. ID. Keep it public. Let's see. In that case, now we could possibly get in a DTO with an ID, in which case we will have to check it anyway. God damn it. Okay, let's check it out, shall we? Let's get the value. You know what? Let's call it PID. Public ID. And in here, we are going to get PID from this. We expect that to be not be there. Now, if we didn't want to validate, there are ways to get by this when you have multiple states of a DTO. What you do is you create multiple DTOs. Why not? Let's do that. That would make things easier, wouldn't it? Let's try that. I'm curious. Let's try that. Because less code is always better. So if I add a inventory DTO created or create, or maybe a inventory create DTO, something like that. In which case we would not want this. And we want to make sure that we don't get anything else. Let's do a little search. Spring Boot error on invalid fields. Something like that. Validation. Is there a... I don't remember. Let's see. Okay, let's be more specific. Input. Fail on non-existent data. There may be something we can use with Jackson with that. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. You know, let's try it out. I'm curious. Let's change this so the inventory controller takes in a... Hold on, let me think. I would rather... If I were to extend the inventory... If I were to extend the inventory... and add a wrapper on the public... the getter and setter, and throw an error if it were to be used. That could be done, I think. Maybe. I don't know. You know, let's just throw an error. Let's just validate in the code. It may be good practice anyway to do that. Good way. Let's see. Okay. Long hide pit. Public ID. So if this is not null, that means that means something is wrong. Then we want to return an error of sort. Or no, let's return null. No. Maybe we should get a response entity. A response object of sorts. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just return null for now. Let's see. What's wrong with this one? Oh yeah, let's change that. UUID. UUID. Return null. Oh my god. Otherwise, keep going. Let's do a log. Let's add SLF4J annotation, which also is a Lombok feature. Let's add a log telling you that log warning attempted to create an inventory entity. An attempt at creating an inventory failed due to PID not being empty. Received PID and then the PID. So I'm gonna add the placeholder characters, comma, and then the value. Let's make a new line. So, there we go. Otherwise, everything is good. We are getting the player ID, which is validated. We'll see. We'll jump back to that. I have some ideas I would like to test out at some point. Then we add that in the inventory entity. We save it, and then we want to return the result. Knowing that this is now null, that's a good thing. That means it's new. That means we want to create something. We want to add something to this. We want to keep the PID. That's not going to change. No, because it's null. What I mean is we're going to keep the ID, which is set when we save. When we save something, this is altered. it's updated. The value is updated internal. But we can also do this just to be more, make it a little bit more readable, even though it's completely unnecessary. So you know that we're returning the changes, even though it's already changing in there. You don't need this. And we want to we want to generate an ID for the player. Not that one. So in the, not the entity, my god, I keep messing up there, Jesus. In the inventory DTO, that's the one. You want to set a PID, which you're gonna generate. Random UUID is enough. That's fine. Except you may want to, even though it's extremely unlikely it's ever have a duplicate, you can also check that. If you were to set this before you save this, so let me move this up and generate one right down there. What else? Then you get the player ID. You know what? We can do it this way. UID generated PID equals this. We're then gonna set the player ID. We're gonna set the PID, which doesn't exist yet, but now we can use this. Haha, cool. In this PID, yay. So now, hopefully, did I set the right? No, UUID. There we go. So now that should work. We are creating a new object of the player ID. We have the PID and we save it. And then we need to set this generated PID to the response. So what we can do is, at the end I might as well just do this. Inventory PDO, set PID, generate PID, and return it. Because we're done. We're not going to return the internal ID of this object. The front end shouldn't have anything to do with that. They shouldn't even know about it. So when we get to the part where we're setting up multiple relationships, the only one that is going to care about the ID of the database tables is going to be the database themselves for setting up the relationships. Because we are still going to ask for things, for items, based on the public ID. So when someone wants some information about the player, they're not going to send in the database ID, it's going to send in the public ID, which is never going to change. Yeah, I don't like this. We don't need this. Let's do like so. Then we set the PID and we're done. Now we could do this on top here, I guess. I don't know. Now, I'm just nitpicking right now. Like, I don't know. This is fine. Let's see. It should work now. While we are here, let's create a getter. A get mapping for the default. We are going to return a inventory DTO. We're gonna name this get inventory. We are going to not take in any of this. We're gonna take in a path, a parameter, not parameter. What's it called? URI. Hold on. Name. Slash ID, which will be a UID ID PID actually. There we go. Let's see. So instead of calling create, we're gonna do get. We're gonna send in the PID. We're gonna get the response and we're gonna return it. So we need to create a get. And that's just gonna use the repository. We're gonna call that get by find by PID. We have to create that. it. So in this, I'm going to add this on the interface. And this is returning a inventory entity. You could also add an optional if you wanted that. That's really up to you. And the way this works is we have some JPA magic going on in the back end here. There are many things you can do here. Let me try something, see if I can find some auto suggestion. Find by. All of this are things you can do. You can do find all by something. You can create find first by. Why not this? Find first by hit. This is a valid command, and then use UID and PID. You can do this as well. Now, because this is unique, this should be more than enough. But if, for whatever reason, this would fail, even though you have it, it may be you have multiple UIDs. But this is generally a safer way to do this. But we don't want to be safe. Let's just do it this way. So now this works. This is the implementation. Believe it or not. Let's return a. We need to create the inventory entity and create the inventory DTO. Inventory DTO equals inventory entity, or rather a new inventory DTO. And let's create a constructor that takes in this to make it easier for us. Yeah. Create constructor. So that allows us to, on the DTO to easily set the data. There we go. That's it. And then we return it. Or we can return this. So if this works, we will now be able to do a create inventory. Request parameter, was that the one? No, that's not the one. Request, I never remember this. Mapping attribute? It's the parameter, right? Isn't it? Or is that a I never remember this one. Is parameter the URI parameter, or is it the I don't know. Let me Google this, let's see. Or search. Request param Spring Boot. Yeah, no, that's not the one I wanted. I want the one that's in here. Yeah, I don't want this. That's not what I want. I wanted the other one. What's it called? Request. Spring request. Request mapping? No, that can't be right. I don't remember. My God. What is it called? Let's see if I can't find it somewhere. Param something? Is it param? No. Parameter? Spring Boot REST URI with ID. Let's find some examples. No. No. I can't for the life of me remember what the name is. And I get the feeling it's gonna be one of those "though I know this" moments. Path variable. Though I know this. The name. Actually, we don't need anything, so it's gonna be the default. That's what I forgot. Why couldn't you suggest to me? Maybe you did. Hold on. Did you? Well, apparently, once again, Alt-Enter solves everything. Yeah. Hey, me in the future, remember to edit this out so no one can see this. Let's try and see if UID is automatically converted, serialized rather. Let's play this. And this is the last thing I'm gonna do today. I'm already 10 minutes over time here. Oh my god, thank you for what was it? Subscribing to YouTube, thank you. Let's see. What's wrong here? Eh? What's wrong? Is your path wrong? Enter the manufactory, hibernation class. It's wonderful to see errors, because then we can find out how to solve them. Our file path is implicit relative to... Ah, yes. I was thinking... Yes, that's the one I wanted. Or maybe this one, but this is fine. This is gonna be in my home folder. Let's add that, like so. What's the name of the app? API template. DB. Try again. There we go. We are running. Let us see if we can't do something. Let's create an inventory for the player. Now we don't have an UUID, so if we were to have that, rather a PID, let's try something just for fun. This should now give us an error. Yes. Oh, internal server. That's not good. It's not good to have internal servers. Why is that? Cannot control instance of DTO, no creators. Oh, really? Oh, I see what I forgot. I forgot a no arc constructor. I have to add that, because if you add a constructor, you also need to add a no arc constructor. Try again. Let us send it again, see what happens. It should fail. Bad request, that is good. The fail should be, you cannot serialize UID from string. No. So the error started before we even got there. Okay, that's fine. Let's just create it first, and then we'll play around. Player ID is going to be 0. Let's create an inventory for this player. We have now created the inventory for this player. The public ID, which is what the API is going to work with, or the game engine or whatever, is going to use this value to identify this inventory for this player. So for example, if I now were to do a get, let me duplicate this, create a get inventory for player, changes to get, and add a slash, and then we'll find this amazingly long string. I'll add it there, and hopefully it's gonna work, and it does. This now returns us with the player that belongs to it. And we don't know anything about the backend IDs. We don't have anything to do with the database IDs. Let's see. If I were to add the same one, what would happen? I don't think anything would happen. Which means we're not currently verifying this. It's just gonna create another one. And that's not a good thing. That means now we have 2 inventories with the same player ID. That may or may not be desirable. You could choose to use an inventory per, let's say you have multiple bags, each with their own list of things. But I don't think that's the way to go. I think we should keep one inventory for everything a player has. And the bags, or whatever else we may want to add on top of that later, should be up to that. Perhaps we'll store some sort of data with it when the player loads or joins the games, or I'll do some updates, move something. We'll probably update some string or a dictionary that contains the positions for each PID for the items which we are also going to create sometime. I don't know. There are a lot of things to do. Let's see. So this works for now. We didn't get that far because I keep talking and talking and talking, but we're learning. We are error handling. We are finding out what we need to do by creating a Spring Boot API. So until the next time, have a good day. Thank you for joining today. Bye bye.